Some say the clipboard is dead. I say it's worse than that. It's evolving. This week on the Buzzcast, Tony Pistilli joins me to poke the bear, challenge the faithful, and talk about what appraisers need to unlearn before the future eats their lunch. Stick around or get left behind holding the handle of tools nobody's using anymore.
Solidify is one of the nation's most trusted valuation and title partners. With their proprietary technology and extensive network, Solidify delivers industry-leading quality, transparency, efficiency, and scale to the largest mortgage lenders in the U.S. Their marketplace of independent, qualified field professionals makes the homeownership experience extraordinary every time. Visit solidify.com for more information and stay connected with their latest news on LinkedIn. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast with your host, Hal Humphreys.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to today's Appraisal Buzzcast. Let me bring back in Hal. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jim Morrison. How are you today?
I'm very excited. We have a returning guest. In fact, he's the very first ever Buzzcast guest. So we're so excited to welcome back Tony Pistilli. We're going to be talking about his recent discussion on the new UAD called The Death of the Appraisal Clipboard. And there was a lot of response to it, so we're giving some response back to it.
Yeah, Tony, we've been getting a lot of responses about a lot of things recently. There's some requirements that we appraisers are going to have to start meeting in the next couple of years, and we've gotten some fairly harsh feedback on some of those things. But we did get some feedback on this article about the clipboard is dead. I want to start this out real quick. I was in a meeting last week in which somebody asked the question, hey, under new UAD 3.6, can I still use a clipboard? And I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was somebody from Freddie Mac said, or maybe it was, I can't remember who it was, but they said, sure, you don't have to use a car to go look at your houses that you're appraising. You can take a horse if you like. And it hit me that's kind of a smart aleck answer, but it's not a bad analogy to illustrate that, hey, there are tools out here available to us now that make our lives a lot easier. Now, look, Tony, thank you for being here. It's really good to see you again. It's good to have you back on the show. A lot has changed. Jim Morrison said you were the very first guest on the very first episode of the Appraisal Buzzcast. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you've been working on, what you're working on now, and kind of where you've landed since we talked to you years ago?
Jim and Hal for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. I started with a company 2 years ago called RestB. RestB is in the computer vision business and primarily focusing on MLS and valuations. I spend my time looking at appraisals and inspections, apps, things like that, and providing solutions for appraisal management companies, appraisers, lenders, mortgage bankers. And I got to be honest, as many jobs as I've had, this is by far the most rewarding and the most fun. I'm not afraid of technology. I'm not a technology person, but boy, once you get beyond the initial fear, there's some real benefits to keeping up with the times.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's get right into talking about your recent article, The Death of the Appraisal Clipboard. The reaction has been strong. Some appraisers are nodding along, others are pushing back. Can you give us the big picture view of what prompted you to write this and what the core message is?
Yeah, I like your use of the word strong. That's definitely a euphemism. There's been some, appraisers are no different than anyone else. We don't like change. Change comes difficult for a lot of us. But I'd be willing to venture that once we do change, we're going to wonder how we ever got back, how we ever made it, way back when. I remember starting with carbon paper forms and Polaroid film. I don't want to go back to that. I remember getting out of my car and opening the garage door manually. I really enjoy the automation of a garage door opener. There's little things that make your life easier. And then there's some things that you have to have. And I think a mobile app is right up there next to those others that you have to have as we start appraising at the end of this year.
It's funny you should mention the garage door opener, and that's a really good example of technology. It kind of changes the way we function. As you can see, I'm in my little cabin property out here in the woods in Middle Tennessee. When I leave my office in Nashville to make the drive down here, I open up a mobile app and I set the air conditioner while I'm on the way down here. So when I get here, it's comfortable. But when I'm not here, it's not burning up energy along the way. So apps make a big difference. There's a lot of anxiety out there in the field right now. What's your take on how the new UAD format is accelerating the shift in how appraisers collect and analyze data?
I don't think appraisers are aware yet, fully aware and fully knowledgeable about the new form, new report. I say form because when you print it out, it's going to look like a form. And all the drop downs and the different choices, the enumerators, it's going to be really difficult in the field. Let's say you have an ADU and then understand, okay, what do I need to collect to put in those spots on the form? So having mobile app that guides you through that process and eliminates the need for any memory or scratch paper. It prompts you when you need to take a photo, exactly what the choices are. And if nothing else, it's going to be way more efficient because once it's in the app, it goes into your desktop or web-based software and no more keystrokes. You collect the data once and you're done.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things is, you go out and look at a property, you forget to get a piece of information that you need that is required, and you got to go back out and get it. With a clipboard, it can be, I have personally missed things in the past that caused me to drive back out and look at the subject again. The mobile app is a report building tool, number one, and number two, it's a checklist of what you need to get while you're on the site. Let me ask you this, Tony. How do you recommend appraisers prepare themselves, not just technically, but mentally for this new way of working? What do they need to unlearn or learn new?
That's a really good question. No matter who the appraiser is, whatever software you use, there's an app available. ACI, Alamode, Bradford, SFREP, they all have apps that are available. I would suggest you just go out to the property and dive right in, do the first go through in the property using the app. And maybe if you struggle, you still have your clipboard and you can, go back, revert back to the old way of doing it and make sure that you collect everything, but give it a try. You don't know until you try it.
I'm going to add to that and say, give it a try, give it 10 tries, make yourself struggle through it. The first couple of times, Tony, I wanted to throw my phone at the wall the first time I tried to use a mobile app, but I made myself, a friend of mine said, do it 10 times. Trust me, do it 10 times. After the 10th time, I was comfortable with it. And it made my inspection process, number one, more organized. Number two, at the end of the day, sometimes I spend a little bit more time on site, but I'd more than make up for that time when I get back to the computer and start working on my report. So give it a try. As Tony says, give it a try. Let me do this, Tony. I'm going to take a break. We're going to come back. I want to hear from one of our sponsors real quick, and we'll come back. And I think Jim Morrison may have this little thing called an anonymous appraiser question that we're supposed to address. But anyway, let's hear from one of the sponsors. We'll be right back.
Solidify is one of the nation's most trusted valuation and title partners. With their proprietary technology and extensive network, Solidify delivers industry-leading quality, transparency, efficiency, and scale to the largest mortgage lenders in the U.S. Their marketplace of independent, qualified field professionals makes the homeownership experience extraordinary every time. Visit solidify.com for more information and stay connected with their latest news on LinkedIn.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host, and I have the joy and pleasure of being joined by Tony Pistilli, good friend, mentor for me in this business in general. He's a super nice guy. If you see Tony at Val Expo, walk up and introduce yourself to him. He is a lovely human being to talk to. He's also, Tony, neither one of us are young bucks. Like we're not the ones that are out there pushing the boundaries on tech, but Tony knows about tech, and he's, as he said in the beginning, he's comfortable with tech. So find him, say hello. Tony, thank you for being here. Now, I said earlier before we went to the break that Jim Morrison likes to throw these anonymous appraiser questions at us. Jim Morrison, do we have an anonymous appraiser question this week?
We do. And yeah, I think the very first episode that we did with Tony Pistilli was an arm's length transaction. And it started because an appraiser reached out to the Buzz and was like, I don't understand arm's length transactions. So, it's one of the catalysts for the podcast and all that. So this one's a little bit different. So it says, I'm doing an appraisal and two of the comps I have previously inspected myself, and I have sketches and square footage that is contradictory to the MLS records. Of course, I trust what I do. So I use that in the appraisal report. The lender is asking me to provide the measurements of the two comparables, and USPAP says the sketch is a result of the appraisal assignment, so it's protected by privacy rules. But I have to use the square footage because I have knowledge of it. How do I handle this?
Wow. A couple of questions in that one. Let's see if we can unpack that. I'm going to assume that the lender is the client. So as the appraiser, you're able to communicate your results to the client without concern about privacy. And the other element, the appraiser, it sounds like he's worried about disseminating the floor plan or the sketch and the measurements. We put that in every appraisal assignment. And I think it's the distinction in USPAP is it fact or opinion? There's some confidentiality rules around opinions, but the measurements, the length of a wall is a fact. And if you report facts, you're not disclosing confidential information. So I think from what I understand and assume, I think it would be okay to do that.
Yeah, look, this does not come up that often in our work as real estate appraisers. It's very rare for a client to ask for sketches of the comps. It's just not a thing that we normally do. Now, if you have appraised the property in the past and you've done the measurements, you've drawn a sketch, you know what the square footage is, you've used ANSI standards, to come up with your square footage, I think you're fine using the square footage. I think, just think of it in terms of an abundance of caution. I probably wouldn't share the sketch with my client unless I had permission from the previous client to share the sketch with them. There is in USPAP a little carve out for redacting information so that you maintain confidentiality. Maybe there's a way to do that. What I would do is put something in the report that says something along the lines of, my comparable data, including GLA, is based on prior appraisal inspection. Measurements were taken during separate assignments. The information is deemed reliable and more accurate than public records or MLS. But the sketch developed under the previous assignment falls under USPAP confidentiality rules, and I can't share that. That's one way to approach it. And if the lender pushes back, I don't think they're going to.
That's a good distinction, Hal. And I didn't think of that, if the comparables were part of an appraisal for another lender, not the same lender, then there are some considerations about disclosing that.
Yeah, so I would think that you could write your way out of that request from the new client, and just explain to him, hey, I personally have no problem sharing a drawing that I did of the building, but technically It is an assignment condition, or it is an assignment result, and I can't share that with you, but I can verify that I did the measurements and put a statement in there. I don't think any clients are going to push back hard on that.
Right.
Jim Morrison, did we muddy the waters enough on that one?
Yeah, I think we got it figured out, and we appreciate everybody joining us. And if you have any more comments for our experts, reach out to us at comments@appraisalbuzz.com. We love getting those anonymous appraiser questions, and I think our audience likes hearing about it if Hal doesn't like answering about them. But we're excited for that. And Tony, we can't wait to see you at Valuation Expo. You guys are always a big part of it, and we can't wait for the cornhole tournament so people can sign up for that and join us for that. That's going to be a lot of fun on the trade show floor.
I've been listening up. I've been, doing the motion for the last 2 weeks, getting ready.
That's awesome. Tony, thank you so much for joining us. Listeners, if you haven't read Tony's article yet, check it out at appraisalbuzz.com and let us know your thoughts. Change is coming fast. Let's be ready for it. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Appraisal Buzzcast. If we have nothing else, for Jim Morrison and Tony Pistilli, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast for this week.